Sometimes the quietest nights echo the loudest secrets. The house was too quiet after the laughter faded. The dinner had stretched longer than Claire expected. Music, jokes, and the sound of plates clinking had filled the evening. Now, only the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock remained. Ethan, her husband, had fallen asleep on the couch halfway through a story. Daniel, Ethan's best friend, was still there, sitting across from her with a half-empty glass of wine. The clock showed 12:37 a.m. Claire glanced toward the window. Outside, the world slept under a soft rain. Inside, she sat with a man who suddenly felt like a stranger and a mirror at the same time. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you'd made one different choice? Daniel's voice broke the silence. Claire froze. The question wasn't meant to be flirtatious. It was quiet, thoughtful. But something in his tone made her heart tighten. She forced a small smile. "That's a late-night question," she said lightly, hoping to turn it into a joke. He smiled back faintly. "Maybe, but don't you ever think about it?" She looked down at her hands. "Everyone does, I guess." Daniel leaned back in the chair, watching her. "You used to paint. Remember?" That caught her off guard. No one had mentioned her old passion in years. She nodded slowly. "A long time ago. Before work, before everything got busy." He tilted his head. "Before you stopped being you?" Her breath caught. "That's not fair." "I don't mean it as an insult," he said softly. "It's just, I see you sometimes, Claire. You smile at everyone, you keep everything running, but it feels like you're fading from your own life." She looked at Ethan, asleep on the couch. His chest rose and fell with the rhythm of deep sleep. For a moment, guilt flooded her chest. Guilt for even listening, for even letting those words sink in. "I think you should go," she said gently. Daniel didn't move. "You're right. I should." But he didn't. His eyes searched hers, and for the first time she couldn't look away. "Are you tired, Claire?" he asked. Her voice came out smaller than she meant. "Of what?" "Of pretending everything's perfect." The words landed like a whisper that carried thunder. She felt them everywhere. In the quiet kitchen, in the hum of the lights, in the ache she didn't know she carried. She wanted to say something, anything, but nothing came out. Daniel looked down at his glass. "He's lucky, you know," he said quietly. "He has someone who keeps everything together." Claire folded her arms. "Ethan tries his best. He's just tired. Work's been rough." "I know," Daniel replied. "I've known him a long time. He's a good man, but sometimes good men forget that love still needs attention." That sentence hit harder than she expected. She stood up, pretending to tidy the table just to escape the weight of the moment. But he kept talking, his voice calm, too calm. "You used to laugh louder," he said. "You used to look at sunsets like they meant something. You used to be the most alive person in any room." She turned toward him, her eyes shining under the kitchen light. "And now?" He hesitated. "Now you look like you're holding your breath." For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the rain outside, tapping softly on the window pane. Claire sat back down slowly. "Why are you saying this, Daniel?" He met her gaze. "Because I can't pretend I don't see it anymore." The air thickened. The smell of rain, the dim light, the stillness. Everything seemed to draw them closer, word by word. "Ethan loves you," Daniel said. "I know," she whispered. "But do you still love him?" The question shattered something inside her. She looked at the man on the couch, the man she'd chosen, the man she'd built a life with. Her chest tightened with confusion. She wanted to say yes, loudly, confidently, but all she could manage was silence. Daniel leaned forward. "You deserve more than this silence, Claire." Her throat went dry. "Stop. I'm not trying to hurt you." "Then don't," she said sharply, but her voice cracked. He stood slowly, setting the glass on the counter. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything." She looked away. "You're drunk." "I'm not," he replied gently. "I just see what he doesn't." The words felt like a confession wrapped in truth. She wanted to scream, to tell him to leave, to wake Ethan and make this moment disappear. But she didn't move. Instead, she asked softly, "Why tonight?" He smiled sadly. "Because I was tired of watching you fade." A single tear rolled down her cheek, and she wiped it quickly before he could see. "You should go," she whispered again. "I will," he said. "But before I do, answer one thing honestly." Her voice trembled. "What? Are you happy, Claire?" The silence that followed was louder than thunder. She looked at Ethan again, peaceful, loyal, familiar. Then back at Daniel, honest, unguarded, dangerous. Two different kinds of love stood before her. One built from years, the other from unspoken understanding. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know anymore." Daniel nodded slowly, as if he expected that answer. He reached for his coat, but didn't move toward the door just yet. "I didn't mean to cross a line," he said. "But if I did, maybe that line needed to be seen." She looked up, her voice breaking. "Why are you doing this to me?" He smiled faintly. "Because someone should remind you that you're still alive." The rain outside grew heavier. Lightning flashed, painting his face in soft white light. For one strange, fleeting second, she wanted to tell him to stay. She wanted to forget everything else, the wedding vows, the years, the stability, but she didn't. She just stood there, hands trembling as he stepped toward the door. "Good night, Claire," he said quietly. She nodded, her lips barely moving. "Good night, Daniel." He hesitated one last time, then looked at her, really looked at her, as if memorizing her face for the last time. And then he said something that made her heart stop. "Tell him I said goodnight, too." "He's lucky, but if he ever forgets that—" "I won't." The door clicked shut. The sound echoed through the house like an ending that wasn't really an end. Claire stood still for a long time, listening to the rain, her heartbeat louder than the thunder outside. She wanted to cry but couldn't. She wanted to forget, but knew she wouldn't. When she finally walked back to the living room, Ethan stirred, half awake. "Daniel left?" he murmured sleepily. She swallowed hard. "Yeah, just now." He smiled without opening his eyes. "Good guy." Claire looked at him, her husband, asleep again before finishing the sentence. She whispered almost to herself. "Yeah, good guy." But deep down, something had changed. Something small but irreversible. She picked up Daniel's empty glass and placed it in the sink. Her reflection in the kitchen window looked different now. Older, sadder, and somehow more awake. The rain softened, leaving a faint mist outside. Claire turned off the lights, her mind still replaying Daniel's voice. "You deserve more than this silence." She went to bed beside Ethan, careful not to wake him. His breathing was calm, steady, the sound of a man content with the world. But Claire lay awake, eyes wide open, her heart racing like a secret trying to break free. For the first time in years, she realized she didn't feel numb. She felt everything, guilt, confusion, longing, fear, all at once. And when she finally closed her eyes, Daniel's question lingered in her mind like a whisper she couldn't escape. "Are you happy, Claire?" She didn't know the answer. Not yet. But one thing was certain. Her life wouldn't feel the same after tonight. Outside, dawn began to rise over the quiet street. The house still looked peaceful from the outside. But inside, behind one window, a woman lay awake, caught between love and something that felt dangerously close to it. Her heart whispered what her lips couldn't say. Maybe the quietest nights really do echo the loudest secrets. And with that thought, she turned to face the wall, pretending to sleep, while a single tear slid down her cheek into the pillow. What if the person who sees you best isn't the one you married? Claire hadn't slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, Daniel's voice came back, soft, steady, dangerously honest. "You deserve more than this silence." The words echoed like an echo she couldn't silence. By morning, the rain was gone, but the silence in the house still felt heavy. Ethan hummed while making coffee, completely unaware that something inside his wife had shifted. Claire smiled faintly, trying to hide the storm behind her eyes. He kissed her forehead before leaving for work. "You look tired," he said. I'm fine, she lied. When the door closed, the house felt too quiet again. She stood by the window, watching his car disappear down the street. A strange emptiness spread inside her chest, a mix of guilt and longing that she didn't know how to name. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Sorry if I said too much last night. I shouldn't have. She stared at the words for a long time. He remembered. He regretted it. But the strange thing was, she didn't. His words had cut deep, but not in a way that hurt. They had woken something she thought had died long ago, the part of her that wanted to feel again. She typed back, hesitated, deleted, and typed again. It's okay. You just caught me off guard. Her thumb hovered over send for a full minute before she finally pressed it. The message went through. Seconds later, the seen notification appeared. No reply. The day moved slowly. She tried reading, cleaning, even baking, anything to distract herself. But every ordinary thing reminded her of last night. The couch where Ethan had slept, the chair where Daniel had sat, the silence between them that had said too much. When evening came, she told herself to stop thinking about it. But fate wasn't done with her yet. Around 7 p.m., she heard a car outside. She peeked through the blinds, and her heart almost stopped. Daniel's car. He stepped out, holding something in his hand, Ethan's jacket. Her pulse quickened. She opened the door before he even knocked. You forgot this last night, he said. His voice was calm, almost casual, but his eyes told a different story. Claire nodded, forcing a smile. Thanks. You could have just brought it tomorrow. I was driving by, he said quietly. Thought I'd return it. She glanced toward the street. No one else around. The air smelled like rain again. Ethan's not home yet, she said, though he hadn't asked. I know, Daniel replied. He called me earlier. Said he'd be late. She froze. So, you came here anyway? He looked at her with a faint smile. Guess I did. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Then she stepped aside and said, You can come in. Just for a minute. He hesitated, then nodded. Just a minute. The moment he stepped inside, the air changed. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat. Daniel placed the jacket on the counter and looked around. You cleaned up, he said softly, trying to sound casual. I had time, she replied, crossing her arms. You want some coffee? He shook his head. No, I shouldn't stay. Then why did you? She asked before she could stop herself. Daniel looked down, his voice barely above a whisper. Because I couldn't stop thinking about what I said. About you. Claire felt her breath hitch. Daniel, don't. I have to, he said, his eyes finally meeting hers. I know it's wrong. I know he's my friend, but last night when I looked at you, I saw someone I used to know, someone who deserved to be happy. Her voice trembled. You're talking like I care? He interrupted softly. Because I do. Silence fell again, sharp and heavy. Claire took a step back, her hands shaking. You should go. Daniel nodded but didn't move. You don't have to be scared of what you feel. I'm not, she said too quickly. He smiled sadly. Then why are you shaking? She looked down and realized he was right. Her hands trembled. Her pulse raced. She couldn't tell if it was fear or something else entirely. Daniel, please, she whispered. He took a slow breath, his tone soft but unrelenting. Tell me you feel nothing, Claire. Just say it once and I'll never bring this up again. Her lips parted. She wanted to say it, to end this before it turned into something she couldn't control. But the words wouldn't come. Daniel's expression changed. It wasn't triumph. It was pain. That's what I thought, he murmured. Before she could reply, her phone rang. The sound cut through the moment like a blade. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. Daniel smiled bitterly. Tell him I said hi. He turned and walked toward the door. Claire stood frozen, the phone still ringing in her hand. When she finally answered, her voice trembled. Hey, she said, forcing normalcy into her tone. Hey, sweetheart, Ethan said cheerfully. Just checking in. I'll be late, but don't wait up, okay? Okay, she whispered. Drive safe. Love you, he said. She hesitated. Love you too. When the call ended, she turned back toward the door, but Daniel was gone. The faint smell of his cologne still lingered in the air. She closed the door slowly, her heart pounding so loud it felt like it filled the whole room. For a long time she stood there, staring at the door he'd just walked out of. What terrified her wasn't that he had said those words. It was that she hadn't stopped him sooner. The realization hit her like cold water. Somewhere between laughter and loneliness, she had crossed an invisible line, not with action, but with thought. She sat on the couch, head in her hands, trying to steady her breathing. Her mind played back the entire conversation. Every look, every pause, every word she hadn't said. She wasn't angry at Daniel. She was angry at herself, for caring, for wondering, for feeling. The next morning, Ethan noticed nothing. He kissed her cheek, grabbed his coffee, and left for work. Everything was normal again, except inside her, nothing was. She checked her phone every few hours. No message from Daniel, no apology, no explanation, just silence. That evening, while washing dishes, she caught herself thinking about him again, wondering if he was okay, if he meant what he'd said, if he regretted it. The truth was simple and cruel. She missed him. Later that night, Ethan was watching TV when he said casually, "Daniel's thinking of moving. Got a new job offer." Claire's heart skipped. "Moving?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "He mentioned it last week. I think he wants a change." She forced a small nod. "That's good. He deserves that." But her voice cracked on the last word. Ethan didn't notice. That night, when Ethan fell asleep beside her, she lay awake again, the ceiling swimming in soft darkness. She replayed Daniel's words like a melody she couldn't turn off. "Tell me you feel nothing." She hadn't said it. That was the problem. By the third day, she decided to end it. Not the marriage, but the silence inside her. She needed to face Daniel one last time, to close this before it tore her apart. She found herself standing outside his apartment that evening. Her reflection in the glass door looked nervous, almost lost. She hesitated for a long time before knocking. Daniel opened the door. Surprise flashed across his face. "Claire? I shouldn't be here," she said quickly. "Then why are you?" he asked. "Because I need to say something," she said. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. "Whatever happened that night, it can't happen again. We can't feel this way. It's wrong." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know. Do you?" she asked, stepping closer. He looked at her, really looked, and whispered, "Then why are you shaking again?" She exhaled sharply. "Because this isn't easy," he smiled faintly. "That's because it's real." Her eyes glistened. "Daniel, stop. I'm not asking for anything," he said softly. "I just needed you to know that someone in this world sees you, truly sees you." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "That's the problem, Daniel. You shouldn't be the one who does." He nodded, pain flickering across his face. "Then I guess this is goodbye." She turned away, her voice breaking. "It has to be." As she walked down the hall, her phone buzzed. Ethan again. She didn't answer. Her hands were trembling too much. When she reached her car, a message popped up from Daniel. "Take care of yourself, Claire. You deserve peace." She didn't reply. Instead, she sat there, tears rolling down her face, realizing something she didn't want to admit. She wasn't sure peace was possible anymore. That night, she came home to find Ethan asleep on the couch again, the same couch where it all began. She covered him with a blanket and stood there for a long time, staring at him, at the man she loved but somehow couldn't reach anymore. Then, quietly, she whispered to herself, "What if he never sees me the way Daniel did?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, dangerous, true. And as the clock ticked past midnight once more, her phone buzzed on the counter. Another message from Daniel. She hesitated before unlocking it. Her heart stopped when she read the words. "I didn't move. I couldn't. There's something I still need to tell you." How do you stop missing someone you were never supposed to miss? Days turned into weeks, but Daniel's last message refused to fade from Claire's mind. She never replied, though she read it every night before bed, like a secret she couldn't delete. I didn't move. I couldn't. There's something I still need to tell you. Those words lived rent-free in her heart. Gentle, dangerous, impossible to ignore. Ethan was his usual self, kind, predictable, and blind to the quiet storm unraveling beside him. He kissed Claire goodbye every morning, came home late, fell asleep on the couch again. Life had fallen into a rhythm that looked peaceful from the outside, but felt hollow inside. Claire went through the motions. Cooking, cleaning, smiling at neighbors, replying to work emails. Yet inside, she felt like she was watching her own life through glass. Everything looked familiar, but she no longer felt part of it. One evening, Ethan mentioned casually, "Daniel might come by this weekend. Haven't seen him in a while." The words hit like a jolt of electricity. Claire froze, trying to sound calm. "Oh, he's still around?" "Yeah," Ethan said, flipping channels on the TV. "Said he's been busy. Maybe we'll grab dinner or something." Claire forced a smile. That's nice. But her mind was already spinning. If Daniel came, she'd have to face him. Pretend nothing happened. Pretend she hadn't stayed awake nights thinking about him. Pretend she hadn't memorized his last message. That night, she dreamt of him, standing in the rain, eyes full of something between sorrow and hope. When she woke, her heart was pounding. She told herself it was just a dream, but deep down, she knew it wasn't just that. It was everything she hadn't said. By Saturday, her nerves were a mess. She kept checking the mirror, redoing her hair, adjusting her blouse, and then scolding herself for caring. "Stop it, Claire," she whispered to her reflection. "You're not that woman." When the doorbell finally rang, she jumped. Ethan opened the door, and there he was, Daniel. Standing there with his easy smile, the same calm eyes that once held her still in a moment she couldn't forget. He greeted Ethan first, clapping him on the back. "Hey man, been too long." Then he looked at her. "Hi, Claire." She tried to reply, but her voice came out barely audible. "Hey, Daniel." They all sat down. Conversation flowed. Stories, jokes, memories. On the surface, it was just another friendly evening, but beneath it, tension simmered quietly, invisible to everyone except them. At one point, Ethan went to the kitchen to grab more drinks. The moment he was gone, Daniel's voice softened. "How have you been?" Claire met his eyes for a second before looking away. "Fine. You don't look fine." "Don't start," she whispered. He leaned back, still watching her. "You never replied to my message." "I couldn't," she said. "Why?" "Because it wouldn't change anything," she said, trying to sound strong. He smiled sadly. "Maybe not, but it would have meant something." Before she could answer, Ethan returned, and the moment vanished. She forced herself to laugh at a joke she didn't hear, sip wine she didn't taste, and keep her heart locked behind polite smiles. Hours later, Ethan got a call from work and stepped outside to answer it. The instant the door closed, the air between Claire and Daniel shifted again. Daniel set his glass down. "I didn't move because of you." Her eyes widened. "Daniel, just let me finish," he said quickly. "I got the offer. I was supposed to leave, but the night before I drove past your house. The lights were on. You were sitting by the window. You looked lost." Claire's throat tightened. "You shouldn't have done that, I know. But I couldn't leave without knowing if that look meant what I thought it did." She shook her head. "You're making this harder." "I'm just being honest." His words hung in the air, quiet but full of weight. Claire whispered, "You're his best friend." "Daniel, I know, and I'm his wife. I know that too." "Then why are you saying this?" He looked straight at her. "Because pretending hasn't made it go away." Before she could respond, the door opened. Ethan walked back in, completely unaware. "Everything okay?" he asked, setting his phone down. Daniel smiled easily. "Yeah, just catching up." Claire forced a nod, her pulse racing. After dinner, Daniel helped clear the table. Their hands brushed once, a small electric touch that sent a shiver through her body. She stepped back immediately, but he noticed. Their eyes met again, just long enough for everything unsaid to speak. When he finally said goodbye, Ethan walked him to the door. Claire stood by the stairs, heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Before leaving, Daniel glanced back at her one last time, a fleeting, silent look that said everything words never could. That night, she cried quietly in bed. Not because of guilt, not because of love, but because she didn't know what was right anymore. The next few days were unbearable. Every time Ethan mentioned Daniel, she felt a jolt of panic. She wanted to tell him everything, confess, explain, free herself. But she couldn't destroy him for something that hadn't even fully happened. Then, one afternoon, as she left the grocery store, she saw him again. Daniel was across the street, leaning on his car. Their eyes met. She froze. He waved once, a small, hesitant gesture, and she walked toward him before her mind could stop her heart. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly when she reached him. "I wasn't planning to be," he replied. "But I saw you, and I guess I just wanted to see if you were okay." "I'm fine." "You keep saying that," he said. "But you don't mean it," Claire sighed. "What do you want from me, Daniel?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "Nothing. Just to know that I wasn't crazy. That maybe for 1 second you felt it too." Her lips trembled. "I did," she whispered. He took a step closer. "Then why are we pretending?" "Because love isn't supposed to destroy people," she said, voice shaking. "And if we cross this line, that's exactly what we'll do." He closed his eyes for a moment. "I know." When he opened them again, his voice was softer. "I never wanted to hurt you, Claire. I just wanted you to remember what it feels like to be seen." She felt tears well up, but she blinked them back. "You did, and that's why I have to forget." He nodded, stepping back slowly. "Then I guess this is goodbye." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Claire?" She looked back. "If you ever need someone to remind you who you are, you know where to find me." Her chest ached. She didn't answer, just nodded and walked away, fast, before she changed her mind. That night, she stood under the shower for almost an hour, letting the water hide her tears. She knew she'd done the right thing, but somehow, doing the right thing had never hurt so much. Over the next week, Daniel's messages stopped completely. No calls, no texts, nothing. He was gone, or at least trying to be. And yet every time her phone buzzed, her heart still jumped, hoping it was him. One afternoon, while cleaning the living room, Claire found one of Daniel's old notes tucked in a drawer, a birthday card he'd given Ethan years ago. She opened it absent-mindedly, but her breath caught when she saw the small writing at the bottom corner. "You found a good one, my friend. Take care of her." Her hands trembled. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. He had loved her quietly, long before either of them admitted it. That night, she sat beside Ethan while he talked about work. She smiled, laughed at the right moments, but her mind was far away. Ethan reached over, squeezed her hand, and said, "You okay, honey?" She nodded quickly. "Yeah, just tired." But inside she felt hollow. The kind of emptiness that even love couldn't fill. Later, when Ethan fell asleep, Claire went to the balcony and stared at the quiet street below. Somewhere out there, Daniel was probably doing the same, pretending to move on, pretending not to care. She whispered into the night, "I'm sorry." A tear rolled down her cheek, and then her phone buzzed again. Unknown number, just one sentence. "Meet me tomorrow, please, one last time." She stood frozen, heart racing. The message had no name, but she knew who it was. She knew the handwriting of his words. Calm, steady, pleading. The city lights glowed softly around her. The night air carried the faint smell of rain. Her fingers hovered over the screen, trembling. She knew she shouldn't reply. But she also knew she couldn't ignore it. Sometimes love doesn't end. It just learns to hide in silence. The message burned in Claire's mind all night. "Meet me tomorrow. Please, one last time." She stared at her phone until the screen dimmed, her thoughts spiraling between guilt and longing. Part of her wanted to ignore it, delete it, pretend she never saw it. But another part, the quiet, aching part, whispered that she needed closure. One last moment to end what never truly began. The next morning, Ethan left early for work, still half asleep, kissing her forehead before rushing out the door. "Love you," he murmured. "Love you too," she said automatically, though her voice felt distant. She stood at the window long after he was gone, watching the street fade into the morning fog. Her reflection looked tired, like someone caught between two lives. After hours of pacing, she finally typed a reply. "Okay, where?" The answer came almost instantly. "The old cafe by the lake. Noon." Her hands trembled. That cafe was where the three of them, she, Ethan, and Daniel, used to hang out years ago. It wasn't just any place. It was where friendship had started, and now it would be where something else ended. What if closure doesn't heal? It just reminds you what you've lost. By noon, she was there. The cafe looked almost unchanged. Same brick walls, same soft music, same smell of roasted coffee beans. But it felt different. Maybe because she was different now. Daniel was already there, sitting by the window. When he saw her, he stood up quickly, his expression soft but serious. "You came," he said quietly. "I shouldn't have," she replied. "I know," he said. "But thank you." They sat down. Neither spoke for a while. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, full of everything they didn't know how to say. Finally, Daniel broke it. "I'm leaving next week. For real this time." Claire's chest tightened. "You got the job again?" He nodded. "Different city. New start." "That's good," she said softly. "You deserve that." He smiled faintly. "I don't know if I do, but I can't stay here anymore. Not when every street reminds me of what I can't have." Her throat went dry. "Daniel?" He leaned forward slightly. "I'm not here to ask for anything. I just couldn't leave without saying goodbye the right way." She looked down at her coffee. The steam had faded, but her emotions hadn't. "You already said goodbye," she whispered. "No," he said gently. "That was running away." "This is different," Claire sighed. "Then say what you need to say." He took a deep breath. "You changed me, Claire. You reminded me what honesty feels like, what connection feels like. You made me want to be better, even if I can't have you." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look up. Why does love always show up in the wrong places? "Maybe because that's where we need it most," he replied quietly. She finally met his gaze. "Do you regret it? That night, everything you said?" He shook his head slowly. "Not a word, even if it complicated everything, even if it hurt. Because for once I said what I really felt." She smiled sadly. "And what do you feel now?" He hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper. "That letting you go will be the hardest thing I'll ever do." Tears filled her eyes. "Daniel, you can't say things like that." "Why not?" He said softly. "The truth shouldn't always be silence." She looked out the window, at the lake shimmering in the distance. But silence is sometimes the only way to protect what's left. They sat in quiet again. Outside, the sunlight broke through the clouds, scattering light across the water. Claire finally stood. "I should go." Daniel rose too. "Will I see you again?" She shook her head. "No, because if we keep seeing each other, we'll keep pretending we can control this. And we can't." He stepped closer, his voice trembling. "Then let me do one selfish thing before you walk away." Her breath caught. "Daniel?" He didn't touch her. He just looked at her. Really looked. One last time. His eyes memorized her face, her expression, her quiet strength. Then he smiled sadly. "You'll be fine. You've always been stronger than you think." She turned away before her tears could fall. "Goodbye, Daniel." "Goodbye, Claire." She walked out without looking back. But when she reached her car, she broke down completely. The sobs came fast, raw, unstoppable. It wasn't the pain of losing someone. It was the pain of losing what could never exist. By the time she drove home, her eyes were red, but her mind was strangely clear. She knew what she had to do now. Not to forget Daniel, but to forgive herself. That night, Ethan noticed the quiet in her eyes. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Yeah, I just realized I've been missing too much of what's right in front of me." He smiled, pulling her into a hug. "I'm glad you're here." As she held him, Claire's heart ached with both relief and sorrow. She loved him in a quiet, loyal way, but she also knew a part of her would always belong to a moment that wasn't supposed to happen. Can love still exist even when it's buried? Weeks passed. Daniel left town. No messages, no calls, no reminders. It was as if the earth itself had swallowed every trace of what they'd shared. But sometimes, when Claire walked by the lake or past the cafe, she'd feel a quiet presence, not haunting, just familiar. Life began to return to its rhythm. Work, dinners, smiles, routines. Ethan was happier. She was calmer. But inside her, something small had changed forever. One evening, while cleaning the study, she found an old photo. Ethan and Daniel laughing, arms around each other from years ago. She stared at it for a long time. Her fingers brushed Daniel's face in the picture. "I hope you're okay," she whispered. She slipped the photo into a drawer, not to hide it, but to keep it safe. That night, she dreamt of the cafe. Daniel was there, sitting by the window again, smiling softly. But when she tried to reach him, the dream faded, leaving only his voice. "You deserve peace, Claire." She woke up crying, not from sadness, but from something else, a strange sense of release. The next morning, she went for a walk by the lake. The air was crisp, sunlight dancing on the water. For the first time in months, she felt light. She sat on a bench and closed her eyes, whispering, "Goodbye," and for the first time, she truly meant it. But can you ever really say goodbye to someone who changed you? That evening, when she returned home, Ethan was waiting on the porch with 2 cups of coffee. "I was thinking," he said, smiling. "We haven't gone anywhere in ages. What if we took a trip? Just us," she smiled back. "I'd like that." As they sat together under the fading sunset, she realized something profound. Sometimes love isn't about fireworks or passion or danger. Sometimes it's about choosing peace after chaos, loyalty after confusion, forgiveness after temptation. And yet, deep inside, she knew one truth she'd never say aloud. That love, even the forbidden kind, doesn't disappear. It simply changes shape. It becomes memory. The wind blew softly, carrying the scent of rain. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Daniel." Ethan turned to her. "What was that?" She smiled gently. "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." He squeezed her hand. "I'm glad you're happy." She looked at him, tears glimmering but peaceful this time. "I am," she said. "Finally." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the world in shades of gold and gray. It felt like an ending, but also, quietly, a beginning. The next morning, as she packed for their trip, she opened her dresser drawer to grab a scarf. A small folded note slipped out, one she didn't remember putting there. Her heart skipped as she unfolded it. It wasn't Ethan's handwriting, it was Daniel's. "If you ever find this, it means I finally left for good. But know this, every word I said was real. You taught me that love doesn't need to last to be true. D." Her hands trembled, and a single tear landed on the paper. She smiled through it, whispering, "Goodbye, Daniel. For real this time." She tucked the note back into the drawer and zipped her suitcase. Ethan called from the car. "Ready?" "Coming," she said brightly. As she stepped out into the sunlight, she felt lighter than she had in years. The past didn't haunt her anymore. It had simply become part of who she was, a quiet chapter that shaped everything after. Cliffhanger. That night, as they drove through winding country roads, her phone buzzed once, an unknown number again. She hesitated before unlocking it. A single message appeared. "I saw you smile today. That's all I ever wanted."